Everyone thinks that Canada's most expensive megaproject, the $34 billion Trans Mountain Pipeline, is automatically the most important one for the country's future.
But when you look at the actual value, like jobs created per dollar invested and economic impact, the rankings completely flip.
The project that will actually reshape Canada the most costs way less than the Trans Mountain Pipeline, and most people barely know it exists.
Let us show you what the data reveals about Canada's 12 most ambitious mega projects and why they actually matter.
The first project is so massive that it's meant to support 60% of Canada's air traffic. We're talking about Toronto Pearson International Airport, Canada's busiest travel hub, which is currently undergoing a multi-phase expansion and redevelopment valued at several billions of dollars. The initiative wants to modernize the airport's terminals, streamline baggage and customs processes, and boost overall passenger capacity. This is supposed to prepare the airport for the anticipated 65 million annual travelers by the mid-2030s. The airport will undergo major upgrades to the airfield, taxiways, power generation, and stormwater infrastructure to address the growing climate risks like extreme rainfall, which is becoming a lot more common in Toronto. This project is phased over a decade to avoid disrupting operations. And the project has officially begun already and is currently focused on planning and small early-stage upgrades. Major construction is planned by the end of 2025, and it is estimated to create over 50,000 jobs.
Canada is about to get a new US-Canada border crossing point. Spanning the Detroit River, Guardi International Bridge is a 6.4 billion and 2.5 kilometer long bridge connecting Windsor with Detroit. The bridge features the longest cable-stayed main span in North America. According to recent reports, it's just 5% away from completion, and when done, target opening date in September, it will become an alternative to the 94-year-old Ambassador Bridge, which currently handles the load of a quarter of all Canada-US trade by value. The bridge will have 6 traffic lanes, 3 in each direction, as well as a dedicated pedestrian and cycling paths. This bridge was essential to alleviate traffic on the Ontario-Michigan border when it started back in time. But we now live in different times, where travel to the US has dropped nearly 40%, and the future of the trade relations between the countries is uncertain. Beyond its engineering brilliance, the Guardi Bridge has been praised for its community-focused approach. It features Indigenous-designed public art installations that are prominently displayed at the Canadian port of entry, reflecting local Indigenous culture and traditions. The project was also widely praised for prioritizing local job creation, employing over 2,500 workers over the 7 years it's been under construction. Even if traveling to the US is not your cup of tea these days, you might still want to experience traveling across one of the greatest engineering marvels in Canada.
As countries grow, their economic success often depends on how well the country connects its citizens with each other. And that's what Quebec City tram project Tram-Cité aims to accomplish. It's one of the cheapest projects on our list, but it has the highest economic impact per capita than any other project here. This $7.6 billion project is a light rail project that will stretch nearly 20 kilometers, connecting 16 residential and commercial neighborhoods. What's the big deal, you might wonder? Well, Quebec City is the 12th largest Canadian city and is growing rapidly. Yet, it still does not have the modern rail transit system. Majority of the city still runs on unreliable buses and pesky cars, causing congestion and travel delays. The Tram-Cité project aims to have 29 stations with service every 4 to 8 minutes during peak hours and is designed to carry up to 65,000 passengers daily. One thing the engineers keep in mind is the city's landscape. After all, this is one of the most historically beautiful cities in the entire North America. That is why the tramway will use quiet, electric, low-floor vehicles. And it will also include a 2-kilometer underground section to go through the Parliament Hill to hide the ugly trail and noisy trains from the public eye. Despite the obvious need for a reliable transit system in the city, the Tram-Cité project has faced political and public resistance. Main concern is how will Quebec City pay for such a pricey project in the first place? The city's residents are also concerned that this project could result in increase in municipal taxes. Nevertheless, the project received approval and is set to begin construction in 2027, with the first train planned to hit tracks by 2033.
Guess what's one thing that all of G7 has but Canada doesn't? That's right, fast-speed rail system. The high-frequency rail project is a $12 billion plan to build dedicated passenger rail lines between Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, and Quebec City. The project's goal is to shift most intercity rail traffic off freight-owned tracks onto new passenger corridors, enabling faster and more reliable service for nearly 18 million Canadians. Trains would travel up to 250 km per hour, which can reduce some routes' traveling time up to 90 minutes. Unlike traditional rail expansion plans, high-frequency rail focuses on service frequency, reliability, and regional economic development. The line will be powered by electricity, with up to 90% of the new service running on electric power, significantly reducing greenhouse gas emissions and supporting Canada's climate goals. It will also connect several underserved cities, including Peterborough and Trois-Rivières, increasing economic opportunity and mobility outside major urban centers. Via Rail and Transport Canada have spent years and years studying the feasibility, and the project still has not started. Instead, it now has evolved into a high-speed rail project called ALTO. So now it's planned to be both high frequency and high speed, if that happens. As of early 2025, the project has entered the co-development phase, following the selection of the development partner, who will be in charge of design and project management. When approved and fully funded, construction could begin by the late 2020s, with service starting in the early to mid-2030s. While critics note the long timeline and high price tag that could reach $100 billion over the next decade, supporters argue that this high-speed rail project is Canada's most obvious next step at modernizing its intercity rail network and catching up to the high-speed rail systems seen in Europe and Asia. After all, we're the only G7 country without a decent rail system.
Are you noticing a pattern here? We're 4 projects in, and a few things stand out. First, all of them are focusing on transit and connectivity, and 3 out of 4 are actually in Ontario. The reality is the Toronto region has seen the most massive growth in the last decade, but the transit system has largely remained unchanged, and this puts pressure on the commute systems, forcing people to compromise between jobs availability, commute time, and where to live. What these projects are doing is actually extending Toronto's economic reach to places like Kitchener-Waterloo, Barrie, and Oshawa. Those are all the places where housing is actually still affordable. But beyond connectivity, we also need to make sure that we can power all that growth. So our next project is explosive and powerful, literally. The Bruce Power refurbishment is a $13 billion, multi-decade nuclear station upgrade that's meant to extend the life of 6 reactors at one of the world's largest nuclear generating stations here in Ontario. Located on the shores of Lake Huron in Tiverton, Ontario, Bruce Power currently supplies about 30% of the province's electricity. But it's getting old. This refurbishment is estimated to extend the plant's life well into the 2060s. The work involves replacing complex reactor components like fuel channels, steam generators, and pressure tubes. This is the type of equipment that operates under extreme heat and radiation and naturally degrades over time. These replacements are carried out with the help of cutting-edge robotics, 3D modeling, and remotely operated tools to minimize human risk. Aside from providing clean electricity, the refurbishment has become a major economic engine for Ontario, having started back in 2016. It's supported 22,000 direct and indirect jobs annually and contributes approximately $4 billion in economic activity each year. The completion of the refurbishment is meant to finish by the mid-2030s. Critics of nuclear energy often raise concerns about radioactive waste and long-term safety, but the reality is that there is no more clean and more powerful way to produce energy than nuclear. But that's not all. Bruce Power doesn't just power Ontario. It also produces and supplies the world with life-saving medical isotopes used in cancer treatment and medical equipment sterilization. Nuclear expertise is globally scarce, and Canada is building one of the world's most advanced nuclear workforces. For skilled immigrants in engineering, this represents a 40-year career pathway that few countries can offer.
Controversy often surrounds largest infrastructure projects, and this project has plenty of it. Generally, it's meant to fight climate change and is the largest clean energy project in BC history. And yet, it could be fueling an ecosystem crisis and another carbon-heavy industry. Site C is a $16 billion hydroelectric mega project on Peace River in British Columbia. is designed to harness renewable energy by reusing the same river water to generate electricity. Once operational, Site C will produce enough clean energy to power almost 500,000 homes annually. Unlike wind or solar, hydropower can be dispatched on demand, making it a reliable energy source as BC moves toward net zero goals. But Site C has also sparked major controversy. The original $6.4 billion budget has clearly doubled, with construction delays and disruptions driving costs up. More importantly, the dam sits on Treaty 8 land, infringing on the rights of the First Nations who have hunted, fished, and lived in the area for generations. The issue is that the project will flood 10,000 hectares of land and threaten over 60 species of wildlife. Both indigenous communities and the UN have raised alarms about the devastating effects of the dam. BC Hydro says it has taken steps to minimize the impact, which include removing vegetation and establishing a $20 million compensation fund to support local agriculture. Adding fuel to the debate is Site C's potential connection to the province's natural gas expansion. Just 63 kilometers from the dam, we have the starting point of the coastal Gaslink pipeline. Gaslink is a $48 billion project that includes a terminal built in Kitimat and an LNG pipeline. This project has had its first LNG shipment sail towards Asia this year. It's an incredible milestone to Canada as it aims to diversify its natural gas exports beyond its south neighbor. Construction on this project began in 2015, and Site C slowly has started getting some of its components operational throughout the 2024.
There's actually another massive public transit project in the works, and it's happening right here in the Greater Toronto area. The GO Expansion project is a $21 billion overhaul of Ontario's commuter rail system. It's one of the largest transit investments in Canadian history. The plan includes electrifying key rail corridors, building more than 200 kilometers of new tracks, and upgrading bridges and tunnels, and modernizing over 40 stations. The project's promise is to run electric trains every 15 minutes during peak hours. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Electrification is a big undertaking, as it will reduce emissions and noise while allowing faster acceleration and deceleration compared to diesel. The project is already ongoing, with some of the work already completed. Now, major construction is ramping up across the Lakeshore, Kitchener, Barrie, and Stouffville lines. This expansion is vital to let Toronto breathe and relieve the gridlock caused by thousands of commuters spending 40 to 90 minutes in traffic during rush hour. There's one thing that Canada has had wrong all this time, while the most of the developed world has got it right all along. Public transit access equals opportunity access. When people have an easy-to-use and affordable way to travel from point A to point B, suddenly magic starts happening. More people get out on the streets, businesses along the major transit routes thrive, and more jobs suddenly become accessible to more people. The GO expansion will give more than 400,000 people the ability to live in affordable areas while still accessing Toronto-level salaries. That's not just transit policy, that's economic mobility policy, meant to make everybody's lives better in the region.
There is yet another juicy public transit project happening in Toronto. The Ontario Line is arguably dubbed one of the most ambitious transit undertakings in Canada's history. It's a $27 billion and 15.6-kilometer subway project designed to transform how Torontonians get around the city. Running from Exhibition Place in the west to the Ontario Science Centre in the east, it will connect with 40 other transit routes, including GO trains, TTC subway lines, and streetcars. When finished, it's expected to move almost 40,000 passengers daily, reducing travel times across the city and easing the burden on Line 1, which is currently operating over capacity. What sets the Ontario Line apart is its mix of tracks both above and underground, designed to minimize disruption to existing communities and theoretically cut construction costs. But this project isn't easy. It's crossing the flood-prone Don Valley River, so engineers are using specialized equipment and construction techniques to safely tunnel under the unstable soil. Similar to REM in Montreal, Ontario Line trains will also be driverless, fully automated, and operated in a single tunnel with a lighter rail system. Construction began in 2022, and the project is being delivered over multiple phases with early works in full steam. Tunnel boring and more extensive station construction are scheduled to ramp up in the coming years, with the full line expected to open in 2031. And you're probably still seeing the pattern. Many of the projects are not just in Ontario, but are also concentrated around Canada's largest economic center. And that's strategic. GO Transit connects the talent pool to more job opportunities. Ontario Line makes it easier to move people within Toronto, relieving city's traffic. Pearson expansion brings in global connection, all while Bruce Power provides the energy foundation. The combined investment of these projects exceeds $80 billion, and that creates North America's third largest economic region after New York City and Los Angeles. That's no jokes.
Here's another controversial yet potentially critical mega project for Canada's economy. The Trans Mountain Pipeline Expansion, or TMX, is a $34 billion project that wants to nearly triple the capacity of an existing pipeline that runs from Edmonton to Burnaby in British Columbia. The goal of the project is to increase Canada's oil export capacity to global markets, particularly Asia. It's projected to boost daily throughput from 300,000 barrels to nearly 900,000. The expansion includes building almost 1,000 kilometers of new pipelines alongside the existing line, adding new pumping stations, storage tanks, and marine terminal in Burnaby. Once fully operational, TMX is expected to generate billions in annual revenue and tax contributions. The project has sparked the most intense debates. Diversification of oil exports, job creation, and potential economic benefits of exporting more oil are obvious, especially in the current geopolitical climate. However, in this country, whenever we talk about energy and pipelines, it's always bound to raise questions from Indigenous nations and environmental groups. There have been questions raised around the long-term liability of the new pipeline, given that the world's oil demand is projected to peak in the next decade. The Trans Mountain Expansion project officially began commercial operations on May 1, 2024, and it has partially achieved its goals. It enabled direct shipments to China, which saw oil flows increase nearly by 10x in the last 12 months. And that added nearly $600 million in revenues to the country. On the flip side, it has not yet reached its full utilization potential, with some reports stating that it's running only at 85% capacity. But there is confidence that the pipeline will reach its full utilization potential in the next 2 to 3 years. So there's another pattern emerging here. It's not just about connectivity with all these projects, it's also about energy. Some of Canada's most ambitious and expensive projects aim to create new trade opportunities, from Guardi Bridge to bring more trade to the US, assuming things settle there, to building the TMX pipeline to connect Canada to Asian markets. Every project has the potential to massively uplift Canadian economy, but there's one project that stands out the most.
Canadian Northern Corridor is an infrastructure proposal, and it has the potential to redefine the country's geography, economy, and global influence. Estimated to cost between $100 and $150 billion, the concept involves building an integrated corridor across the vast Canadian North, linking remote and resource-rich regions through a network of railways, roads, energy pipelines, and high-speed internet. First proposed by the University of Calgary School of Public Policy, the project envisions a pan-Canadian trade and logistics route that connects the Atlantic, Pacific, and Arctic coasts. This project is crucial not just from the standpoint of economic development, but also national security with the rising tensions over control of the Arctic. As it stands right now, the Canadian Arctic infrastructure is a little sad. Unlike traditional mega projects that are tied to a single city, region, or resource, the Northern Corridor is a collection of projects meant to augment and unify Canada. It will unlock access to mineral deposits, support Indigenous-led development, facilitate Arctic sovereignty, and most ambitiously, provide new shipping options as the Arctic soon becomes accessible due to climate change. The optimists believe that this project will position Canada as a global player in critical minerals, defense, green energy, and connectivity. However, the project is still in the feasibility study stage, with no shovels in the ground yet. With great ambition come great challenges: extreme weather, sensitive ecosystems, jurisdictional complexity, and the need for sustained Indigenous partnership. If realized, the Canadian Northern Corridor will be the largest infrastructure initiative in the country's history, with implications that stretch far beyond Canada's borders.
These aren't just construction projects, they're Canada's massive bets for the next 30 years. We're betting on the Ontario mega region, connecting affordable housing to high-paying jobs. We're building the trade corridor network, positioning Canada as North America's logistics and resource hub. And finally, we're betting on the Arctic and making it ready for the climate change so that we can leverage it for shipping routes and make sure that our Arctic borders are protected. For Canadians and newcomers to Canada planning their future, the message is clear. The next decade's biggest opportunities are in the regions where these projects connect. So the question isn't just about which projects will get built. It's about whether you will position yourself to benefit from the Canada they're creating and whether you'll take an active part in that. So as we look at all of these projects, there is a couple of main takeaways I'd like to share with you. First is the GO Transit Corridor. This corridor from Kitchener-Waterloo to Oshawa will offer the best housing to opportunity ratio in Canada. The Quebec City is also about to become dramatically more accessible and efficient, so definitely watch out for real estate opportunities before the Tram Cité opens in 2033. The Windsor region is quietly positioning itself as Canada's logistics hub, so transportation and supply chain jobs will boom, assuming that US calms down and makes a good deal. And finally, Northern Ontario mining communities along the proposed Northern Corridor route are the highest risk but also the highest reward bets for the next decade, if you don't mind the little permafrost.
Let us know which projects you are excited about the most, or maybe there is something that we've missed.
Thanks so much for watching. If you want to stay in touch, make sure to sign up for our free newsletter where we share weekly updates on the most exciting things that are happening in Canada and opportunities that come along with it.
You can do so by clicking the link in the description box below or by visiting our website, makethatchange.ca.
And if you're a member, thank you so much for your support. It means a lot to us.
And if you too want to support us, you can do so by joining our YouTube or Patreon memberships.
If the algorithm got it right, you will enjoy this next video next.
And we'll see you there.
Take care.